Today's objective, we're starting our probability unit, so you might need a calculator. Probability intro, so this is just a probability of introduction, what probability is, which I'm sure you already know, and a couple of things that you need to know. So the first thing is probability describes the chance of an event happening, the chance of an event happening. So probability describes how likely or unlikely that event will happen. An event is the thing we're talking about. Probability ranges from 0 to 1. From 0 to 1, or from 0% to 100%. So from 0 to 1 or 0% to 100%. So draw a number line, make sure you get this down in your notes, that if you have a number from 0 to 1 and you have 1/2 in the middle, if the probability is 0, that means it's impossible. If the probability is 0, it's impossible. The probability of the sky being purple, well, it kind of is purple in a sunset. Okay, bad example. Trying to think of a probability of 0. The probability of a guy having a baby, impossible. And I don't care what you say, the probability is 0, so it's impossible. The probability, if it's 1/2, if it's exactly 1/2, that means it's equally likely. So it could happen, it could not. If it's 50%, it's equally likely. Anything from 0 to 1/2 is going to be less likely, because if this is equal, then that means that's less. Anything above half is going to be more likely. So if you're getting up into 70%, 80%, 90%, that's going to be more likely all until you get to 1 or 100%. 1 and 100% are the same thing. And if you get all the way up to 1 or 100%, that means it's certain. It is certain. So we're going to use these words: impossible, equally likely, and certain. And so you have to know those words. Alright, so example 1, describe each event with words. So if you have a bag of marbles, there are 6 green, 6 red, and 12 blue. So that's 24 total. Alright, 6, 6, and 12, green, red, and blue. So we're going to describe these events in words, meaning impossible, certain, equal likely, more or less. Alright, the probability of choosing a purple. Choosing a purple marble. So if you reach into this bag of marbles, what's the likelihood that you pick out a purple? Are there any purple? No. So it would be impossible. Because we're in words. So impossible, you can't pick out a purple. What is the probability that you're going to choose a blue? So we look over here, we have a blue. Well, there's 12 blue out of 24 total. So 12 out of 24. What do we know about 12 out of 24? That's equal to half. So this is equally likely. That means it's halfway in the middle. It could go either way, so it's equally likely. Probability of choosing a blue or green. So blue or green. So there are 12 blue and 6 green. So this would be 18 out of 24. 18 out of 24, that's a pretty good chance. That's more than half, so this would be more likely. More likely for choosing blue or green. It's not equally likely, you have more of a chance of picking a blue or a green. Choosing a marble, okay? Doesn't give us a color, so what's the probability that you stick your hand in there and you pull out a marble? You're going to get a marble every time, right? It doesn't say a color, so this would be certain. You're certain to get a marble. You will get a marble when pulling out a marble. Choosing green. So green is only 6 out of 24. 6 out of 24, that is less than 1/2, so this would be less likely. And then choosing red. So red, there are 6 out of 24, so that means it would be less likely. So we range all the way from impossible to certain. And that's how you describe with words. Okay? To find the probability, set up a ratio. A ratio. We're going to use fractions. But you set up a ratio of the event out of the total outcomes. So this is the event we want out of the total outcomes. So here's a spinner, and we've got a big section that's blue and green and red. But right now, they are not equal sections, so we need to make them equal. So I'm going to just break them up. All right, are they all equal? No, so I need to go this way, and this way, and this way. I think that is supposed to be there. So I've broken them up into equal sections, so you need to make sure all your sections are equal, and I have 2, 4, 6, 8, so 8 total. I always have to know your totals. So what is the probability of blue? What is the probability of blue? This is the basic ratio setup. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections are blue, so that means our event would be 5 out of the total number of outcomes, which is 8. So 5/8. Very simple, 5/8. What's the probability of red? So I have one section that's red out of 8. So my probability would be 1/8. I have one chance out of 8 to get red. What's the probability of red or green? So I need to count up the red and green. So I have 1, 2, 3 over 8 total, 3/8. So that's how you find a probability using a ratio. All right, so example 3, find the probability of the fraction, decimal, and percent. So probability can be written as those 3, and they're all interchangeable, fractions, decimals, and percent. So let's review. Sam has 3 apples, 2 oranges, and 5 pears. So Sam has some fruit. And we need to find the probability of orange. So 2 oranges out of 10 total, 3 plus 2 plus 5. So I have 10 total pieces of fruit, 2 over 10, which you can be written as 1/5. And then as a fraction, a decimal, 2/10 would be 0.2, because you could say, or 1/5, but 2/10 would be written as 0.2. And if you're not sure how to do that, make it equal to 100, and it would be 20, so 0.20. And then that would be 20%. That would be 20% decimal and fraction. So that's the probability of orange. So let's do another one together. The probability of apple or pear. So we have 3 apples and 5 pears. So the probability of apples and pears would be 8 out of 10. So there's a fraction. You can reduce it, so it would be 4/5. Now as a decimal, 8/10 of a decimal is 0.8. And then as a percent, that would be 80%. 8/10 and 80%. So we have a more likely chance to pull an apple or a pear, because that's more than half. And this one would be a less likely chance to pull an orange, because that's less than half. So there are the words also. Okay? So all the probabilities of an event will have a sum of 1 or 100%. All the probabilities of an event will have a sum, so it means add, from the event. So I'm talking about like the same event. Here we go, example 4. Let's say we have some marbles. And in the marbles, 1/3 of them are blue. 1/3 of the marbles are blue, and the rest is green. Do we know our total? No, we do not know our total. So we can't just do a ratio, but we can find it by setting up an equation. In the bag are blue and green. That's all we have, are blue and green. So we're going to say the probability of blue plus the probability of green is going to equal 1. Right? Because all together they have to equal 1. So we know the probability of blue is 1/3. That's where I get my 1/3 from. And we don't know the probability of green, so we don't know how many there are. It's going to equal 1. Now some of you already know what that probability is going to be. Oh, sorry. Okay? Some of you already know what it is, but let me show you. We have a denominator of 3. So we want to make 1 whole out of 3, so that's going to be 3/3, because that's 1 whole. Then I can subtract 1/3 from both sides, and the probability of green, 3/3 minus 1/3 is 2/3. So even though we don't know how many marbles are in the bag, we know that the probability of green is going to equal 2/3, which is like a repeating decimal. So 2/3. Best to keep it fraction like this form. Let's do another one. Example 4b, we have jelly beans. We have grape, cherry, and orange. My favorite would be cherry. Probability is 0.3, 20%, and we don't know. So probability, probability, and then we don't know. So I set up my equation. Probability of grape is 0.3. Probability of cherry is 20%. Probability of orange is we don't know. And because I have a percent, I used a percent in this equation. If it gives you a percent, then you can use 100%. So I need to change this to a percent. So what is 0.3 as a percent? 0.3 as a percent, this would be 3/10. So this is 30% plus 20% plus question mark. So now let's add these two combined like terms. 30% plus 20% is 50%. Plus question mark equals 100%. And then from here, hopefully you know what to do. 50% plus what will equal 100%? Well, there's only one option. The only other option is for that to be the other 50%. So the probability of orange is 50%. 50% is the probability of orange in all of those jelly beans. And we don't need a calculator. I don't know, I mean, I guess you could use a calculator. Ooh. Okay, so chips, we have some chips in a bag. 1/4, 12%, and we don't know. So you notice I've set up my equation. I've substituted in 1/4, a 12, and question mark. And I want to change 1/4 to a percent. So what is 1/4 as a percent? That's 25% plus 12% plus question mark. When I add these together, 25% plus 12% is going to be 37% plus what equals 100. And then you can subtract that out, 100 minus 37, and it looks like probability of green is going to be 63%. I hope I did that right. Yep, 63%. All right, so this last one, spinner with 3 sections. We don't know how big the sections are, but we know the probabilities of blue, green, and red. So here's your equation. I want you to substitute in the probabilities and find what is the probability of the red, what's the probability of us spinning a red, and we will go over this answer tomorrow in class.